Hello and welcome to the 2019 CX virtual event, Boosting Your CX with Personalization. My name is Julia Boyle with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have a few administrative details to share with you, and then I will turn things over to our esteemed speakers. First, we would like to thank Bold 360 by LogMeIn for their partnership with today's event. They've been a wonderful thought leadership partner to Argyle and are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. So thank you again to Bold 360 by LogMeIn. We appreciate you joining us today. We welcome you to stay connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, please use the hashtag ArgyleCX. You can also follow us on Twitter at Argyle Executive Forum and be sure to join our LinkedIn group, Customer Experience Forum. I also want to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we've curated based on the feedback we've received over the years from our members. Argyle is very proud and protective of this policy as it reflects our commitment to ensure the neutrality and overall value of the content presented at our events. We've worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. We also have an upcoming CX Leadership Forums that may be of interest to you. February 27th in San Francisco, March 12th in New York City, and April 29th in Chicago. Finally, and most importantly, please submit any and all questions that come up during today's event into the Q&A section of the interface. Following the panel discussion, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on these questions. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Ross Haskell, the Digital Engagement Strategist at Bold 360 by LogMeIn. We are pleased to have Ross with us to deliver opening remarks. Welcome, Ross. Over to you.
Thanks, Julia. Appreciate it, and appreciate everyone's time today. I know asking you to spend an hour with us on the phone is a lot, so I really have tried to put together some good content here, and I hope that the discussion we have at the end will also be very good. I do want to reiterate how important it is for you guys to ask questions. The more engaged that you are, the more questions that you ask us, the better this session will be for everybody. So please go ahead whenever you have an opportunity and put questions in. So I've got a small slide deck here to sort of kick us off. I think it'll take maybe 10 or 15 minutes to get through. But before I did that, I just want to introduce myself a little bit so that folks know about me and my experience. So my title is the lead evangelist for Bold 360, but a lot of people ask me what that means, people like my mom. So basically what that means is that I have been working with this product and the customers of this product for more than a decade. And so I've really had an opportunity to see products, digital engagement products like ours, really work and deliver results for companies. And it's, by the way, not particular companies. It's all across a variety of vertical markets. I just did an analysis actually to try and figure out, hey, are we, over-indexing or under-indexing in different vertical markets? And if you look at all the customers that we've onboarded in the past about 18 months, there's over 22 vertical markets represented. So digital engagement is really not just an e-commerce thing or a financial services thing. Everyone cares about and is using digital engagement, and so that kind of breadth and even depth of experience is what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And so when we think about digital service and especially self-service and chatbots and so forth, we have seen across the whole series of customers really impressive results. We've seen faster resolution times. We've seen potentially significantly decreased operational costs. Absolutely improved customer satisfaction scores, and whether you measure that through effort scoring or NPS or just straight satisfaction, we've seen all of those improve. We definitely have seen higher conversion rates. more revenue for those that actually transact through their websites, and we've seen just a general increase in customer engagement, more engagement that is efficient. So it doesn't necessarily simply just create more work for the contact center. It actually can carve off some of that work, handle it through self-service, and allow agents to really connect with the people who need that human-to-human connection. So the results that we've seen from a self-service first platform have been very impressive. And it's really an imperative for all companies. It's not something just to be thinking about. You need, and one of the things you'll hear from our panelists today is that they're all actively doing things. So even if they're at the beginning stages, they are in market with solutions, trying things out. And really, if you're not at that point, then there's some risk of falling behind. Some statistics here: 81% of consumers try self-service before contacting a company. A lot of people think, oh, we absolutely have to talk to all of the customers who want to talk to us. Not necessarily. I mean, if you can self-serve, if a customer can self-serve their problem, they'd actually prefer it. 88% of companies are investing in or exploring some form of AI, and 76% believe AI is changing CX for the better. So the time is now. This is not a future statement anymore. And so if your organization is still thinking about it, I would argue that 2020 is the year to really do something about it, to launch projects, get projects into the market so that you can track results. Given all the success we've seen, we've also seen some failures, and many chatbots do fail to hit the mark. And we thought to ourselves, why? We came up with 3 or 4 reasons why chatbots fail, and I'll talk about that briefly. And then at the end, that's when we'll kind of launch into the panel discussion. We'll kind of keep it going. We'll talk about chatbot success, chatbot failure. We'll talk about the role that personalization plays in each of those. So what's the first reason why chatbots might fail? And by far, the most significant reason that we've seen is a chatbot project with no clearly defined business goals. There's another one that's related to this, which is too many clearly defined business goals. So both ends of that spectrum we've seen in the market, and both of them have led to failure. So let me talk about the first one. So no clearly defined business goals. So chatbots continue to be a very, a powerful buzzword. A lot of us get asked about them inside of our organizations, and there's some urgency, real or made up, to actually do something in the market. And a lot of projects that rush, that try and get something out there, do end up failing. And by the way, we should maybe define failure here. What do we mean by failure? Because it can be multiple things, but certainly if you increase the effort that your customers need to exert in order to solve their problems, that's a failure. If you harm the experience in some way, you create negativity or friction in the experience, then that's a failure. I mean, if you actually impact business results, right, decreased revenues, decreased conversion behavior, all those types of things, obviously those would be considered failures as well. But by far the most common reason that we see is this one, is that people rush to the market. They don't really think through what problem they're trying to solve. Just so you know, the polar opposite is also true, meaning the ones that we've seen be the most successful are the ones that are laser focused on 1 or 2 use cases. And sure, they may have a long list of things that they want a chatbot or AI to do for their organization, and yes, we'd agree that AI can probably do all of those things, but tackling them all at once is also a recipe for failure. Choosing 1 or 2 and doing them well and quickly, by the way, getting it out as quickly as you can, that is where we've seen success. And today, our most successful chatbot implementations, AI implementations, even the ones that are very broad and very wide-reaching, they started pretty small. They started very focused, very laser-focused. So this is the first reason why chatbots might fail, either not clearly defined set of goals or way too many of them at once. talk about number 2. Not using real customer language. So a bot that sounds like a bot is not good. We believe and continue to invest in making bots as conversational as possible. Human conversation, modeling human conversation and vocabulary, especially to your demographic, is very important. And what does this mean? Well, it does mean something for your organization. It means that this is not something you can set and forget. This is not something that you can do in a hurry in the beginning of a project, right? Someone or a group of people have to care about this and take on part of it as their job, the curation of the bot's intelligence, right? Someone needs to pay attention to this on an ongoing basis, and they need to have tools that allow them and facilitate them to pay attention to it on an ongoing basis so that you can always ensure that you're addressing the concerns that your customers have and that you're doing it in a way that is understandable to them. So that is somebody's job, or a lot of people's jobs, right? So we have some customers that they reward their agent pool for providing feedback on what's inside of the bot knowledge base, right? So they also have an agent-facing bot, and they're able to rate it, right, and say, hey, this is out of date, this is no. And so we have a lot of organizations that essentially crowdsource the management of the knowledge-based content to everyone who interacts with it, internally and externally. And so not using real customer language, making a bot seem very impersonal, this is definitely one of the reasons we've seen bots fail to achieve their goals. Even if you have really good metrics, really good goals, unlike our first reason, right? Let's say that you don't have that reason, but you still can fall down if you don't pay attention to being as real and as conversational as you can with your customers. Okay, just a couple more to go. 3, similar, set it and forget it. We've had some bots that have been launched, and people come back and look at it at the end of the month, and that is just not the way that is just not good best practice when it comes to bots. In fact, the opposite is true. When you first launch a bot, you need to pay attention every day, almost in real time. And we do have customers who, when they launch the bot, they actually were supervising all the bot conversations, right? They were watching over the shoulder of the bot, taking notes, making sure that they were honing it. In fact, I would say the early days are the most important, not to set and forget. So definitely need to have a plan in place, an operational plan on how are we going to monitor these conversations, how are we going to get real voice of the customer data, whether that be through some sort of dashboard or some sort of export functionality. All the tools out there work a little differently, but some way to make sure, are we answering the questions? Are we doing it in a conversational manner? Are we doing it as expediently as possible? And you won't be able to answer any of those if you set it and forget it. You've got to be paying close attention, and there needs to be a team of people paying attention to it, depending on how extensive your implementation is. All right, 4th reason why a chatbot might fail, sort of the topic of today, not personalizing the experience. So, every journey on your website is a bit different, and the consumer that takes that journey is a bit different. And making sure that you have personalized those journeys associated with not only the goals, but the different milestones necessary for getting there, very important. And personalization can include lots of things, not just using customer information, but that's a very important thing if relevant. If someone is inside of their account, they're logged in, they're authenticated, then your opportunity to personalize there is much greater, and you definitely should. You can solve problems a lot faster with an authenticated user because you know so much about them, right? And based on where they are, based on what page they're on, you might even be able to predict what the problem is they're trying to solve and be really proactive, right? That's another way to be personalized, is to be proactive, is to answer a question before being asked. And that is one of the ultimate ways to deliver really excellent service. Okay, so how can you make it personal? I just mentioned being proactive, informative and relevant, timely, very important, right? Don't wait around to be asked. Do it at the right time. And then rich content is another way. So words are wonderful, and words are sometimes exactly what somebody needs, but sometimes they need a how-to video, right? Or sometimes they need a manual that needs to be uploaded to them, and all of those should be possible inside of your engagement platform. So those are some of the ways to make it more personal. Okay, I think with that, what I'd like to do is turn it back over to Argyle, who will bring us into the panel discussion portion of our event today. And I also will be your moderator, so after she's done, I'll ask our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll facilitate a discussion with some of these experts. So one final reminder, please, if you have questions about any of the content that I have put in or about what you're about to hear, the discussion we're about to engage in, please put the questions in. The more engaged, the more questions you ask, the better the session will be for everybody.
Thank you, Ross. That's a great presentation. Yes, as a reminder to our listeners, please submit any questions you have into the Q&A interface, and following the panel, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on these questions. We'll now kick off our panel discussion titled, Boosting Your CX with Personalization. Ross, the floor is yours.
Thanks again. So yes, I will be the moderator for the panel today, and I'll just let everybody know who's listening. We do have a couple of questions prepared, but really we want this to be organic, and so my job is, if I hear something deserving of follow-up, I'm going to follow it. We're going to go off on whatever relevant tangents we think we need to that will benefit the discussion. If we get too far afield, I will bring us back, and I've got a couple of questions I can ask. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to have the panelists introduce themselves in the order that they're listed here, and just tell us a little bit about yourself, the organization that you work for, and just maybe broadly some of the experience that you've had with AI, with chatbots. And David, that means we would start with you.
Sure. Hi, guys. David Farris, Director Worldwide Customer Experience with EA Sports. Most people have heard of that brand, but if you have not, we are a video games company. We've I would use a very informal term, flirted with AI. So I look forward to sharing some of our learnings with the group today.
Renzo.
Hi,
you may
this is Renzo.
need to introduce yourself. There we go.
Currently, I lead the Game Capital Group. Mostly well known as the holding company, but we're mostly known by Forex.com, which is a trading platform to use to trade futures. There are only a few brokers in the U.S. that can allow that, and most institutionals will do transactions through us. Retail is the side that I lead on, and we are very engaged in terms of how customers engage in our trading platforms and how they trade and what questions they have to have a better trade, and that lose money at the end of the day.
Great, thank you. Rosalyn?
Hi, everyone. I am Rosalyn Rayborn. I'm the VP of Brand and Creative Services for Associa. Associa is the largest HOA, Homeowners Association management company in the U.S. We have offices in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, and we have a lot of brands in our portfolio, so we've had a lot of conversations about chatbots, so looking very forward to talking about it with you guys.
Great. So let's just kick off the discussion with a very basic question. Just basically, each one of the panelists, I want each one of you to respond to this and just tell us about what has your experience inside your organization been with chatbots? What have you done with them so far? What value have they provided? What kind of positive things have you been able to see? Who would like to start? David, could you tell us about what EA Sports has been done? You said flirted with. Tell us a little more.
Yeah, sure. So we've run numerous trials with chatbots for different purposes along the way. So we're still very much in the experimentation stages of it. But for us, the positive has been that when we have used it for the cases that we've applied it to, we've been able to achieve a 90% plus resolution rate, which is good. So that's comparable to our human advisors, which is obviously very positive. I think the other very positive thing to bring from this, and this is certainly relevant to our community, is the players weren't aware that they were actually talking with an AI chat box. They generally thought that they were talking to a human being. So that's a positive from our perspective. And then obviously there's some key efficiencies applied to the chat box from an OpEx perspective. So I think those would be the main call-outs on the EA Sports side of things. Thanks.
Rosalyn, how about you?
Sure. So, so we have a portfolio of hundreds of brands spanning different parts of community management. So we have a lot of different teams that we serve, and so we've had a lot of conversation about bringing chatbots into the brands. And for some of them, we've said no, there hasn't been a strong enough business case. And I think that definitely goes back to, Ross, as you mentioned earlier, just having those clear goals. So for one of our brands, we were able to make a really great business case for it. And our initial rollout was a custom chatbot, and then we had some lessons learned from that, and then we rolled out a third-party platform. And for us, it's been very valuable. We've been able to see huge improvements in our core focus for this one is for registration. So we've seen some great some changes in the way our registration process has gotten a lift just as a result of leveraging the chatbot.
Great. And Renzo, how about yourself?
So when we start looking into chatbots, we ask the question of first where we're going to use a chat, right? Because most company fail is you want to do a one-size-fits-all and trying to resolve all your problems. So we first try to understand how and where we're using a chat box, how it will elevate customer satisfaction, how it will drive our operational efficiencies, and how at the end, how we will help our client self-serve. So the first thing we did is just to go into our customer relationship management team and said, hey guys, where are you having the most questions? Where are the most questions coming for you, and where are they easy to support by a chat box? So we start trying out a different chatbot with data, right, to see how is customers gonna react, on talking to chatbots and self-serve when it comes to change their, putting trades or asking about their account status or things that can be answered really quick and didn't demand the use of a person. So early stages at this moment, as in a trial, but it's been a very good result because we are laser focused on what we need to do and where, not trying to go after resolve the whole problem when it comes to chatbots on a website or interacting with customer acquisition.
Renzo, very interesting. You actually brought something up that I just want to highlight and make sure everyone heard this clearly. So when I talked earlier about having the right goal, the right metrics, there's really, I've seen customers choose different paths here, and you just mentioned one that I thought was interesting, which is really low-hanging fruit path. What can be automated the easiest? Now, perhaps the ROI on that is not as high as something else we might do with a chatbot, right? So that's the other way that someone will approach go, what is the activity that we should automate with the chatbot that will yield the greatest return for us? And those are not necessarily the same things. In fact, they're often very different. And organizations, when deciding to do a chatbot, will very frequently pick one or the other, right? They'll either say, no, we're going to focus on the thing that will deliver the highest return, even though it's hard, right? Even though it's difficult to do. We're just going to focus on that because we know if we do it, we get a big return. Or they may say, we don't want to do that. We're too new. We want to do something we believe we can be successful with, even if it's small, just to demonstrate success. So what can we do? What can easily be automated? And so for those of you who have not done anything yet, who are unlike our panelists who have no experience, this is a way to structure your thinking and structure with your team. Is there's two sides of a coin here, and neither of them are wrong, right? I've seen very successful chatbot deployments using either one of those. And I highlight that because Renzo talked about picking one of those. Okay, so let's move on. I heard some people talk about some metrics, talk about things that would determine if things are successful. I just want to kind of drill into that a little bit. So you said something about registration. Can you go a little deeper and talk about what metrics really determine if a chatbot is going to be successful or not?
Sure. So for us, we definitely had a very clear goal of automating registrations for a product that we manage. So for us, success was unassisted registration. So how is this chatbot going to assist with registrations? And then the other metric that was important, because it was kind of the reason why we started, was are we experiencing a decrease in registration-related customer service tickets? That was huge. So that was the reason why we wanted to automate registration, because we were having so many calls and emails about simple things that we could, if we could automate that process, we would really free up our customer service agents. And so for us, we looked at, okay, are the registration-related customer service tickets increasing or decreasing, and are we generating more unassisted registration? So that we had a very clear way to measure success or failure.
That's a really good answer. I like the fact that you had two metrics, right? I think it's important to have almost one check the other, right? So because what if you did have a successful amount of self-service registrations, but the number of registration tickets went up, right? There'd be at least a concern there, right? So I love the fact that you have both of those. It really checks the other one. Does another panelist have an example of a metric that they really cared about? I know, David, you talked about your gamers doing something. Can you go a little deeper there?
Yeah, so for us it's resolution. So the what matters more to us actually than the efficiency of the operation is making sure that we're resolving as many players' issues when they do contact us. And our Chatbots AI had considerable success, to be honest, more than I expected. Does that provide enough context?
It does. What kinds of issues are you resolving with a chatbot? I'm curious, just because I imagine that the wide variety of things that might be wrong with a video game interface could be just very challenging.
Yeah.
Or just some.
Yeah, I mean, our titles now, our products are all 24/7 live service with millions of transactions happening every minute. So multiple things can go wrong for the player. What we did with the chatbox, though, is used it for standardized contact categories, manage my account, missing content, update my profile, my account got hacked, things of that nature. The more unique cases that players had, we didn't apply the chatbox to those cases.
Okay, so similarly, you either did an analysis on those cases as being those that could easily be automated or the ones that produce the greatest return, or both, and that's how you made the decision on which ones to go with.
That's right, and we obviously, the ones that are more easily automated went through to the chat box. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Renzo, what about you? Did you what kind of metrics can you talk to?
We kind of focus on four. I think one of those already David talked about. We have focused on time, duration, customer satisfaction, and resolution rate. Just to prove the efficiency and to again, we are early stages and we are trying something that is common questions. We are in financial vertical, so we cannot use a chat box to advise or to provide certain answers to customers because we're regulated. So we're trying to be specific on the questions the customer asks. You know, for example, right? You place a trade, you want to know your account balance, or you want to withdraw. There's a specific commands that the customer will be able to take over the phone, but instead goes to a chat box and then will be able to do it right away, right? managing these metrics, we understand how much time we're liberating for our customer relationship management, and the resolution rate, how many of those are being resolved and in what time, so to prove success of the chatbots and again, prove efficiencies in our operations.
Okay. Very good discussion. Earlier in the conversation, I heard someone mention, I think, Rosalyn, it was you, you talked about you did a custom chatbot, and I assume this means that you built it yourself or built some part of it or something like that. Here's the question I want to caution everybody. I know that people, especially with not very much chatbot experience, are very curious about the vendor selection process. I do not want you to name any names. Do not tell us about any vendors that you've selected or not. But I do want to understand if you have brought vendors in, what criteria did you utilize? How did you make that decision? Who was involved in the decision? Because chatbots are relatively new, and evaluating chatbot technology is relatively new. I know that our audience will really listen to your advice about how you made the decision, maybe offer some tips about some good practices when you're kind of making a vendor decision for chatbots.
Sure. Well, for us, I will say there are a lot of options out there, and so when coming off of a custom build, our real goal was, because the challenge with the custom build was all of a sudden only a certain group on the team could make changes and all of those things. So we really needed to democratize our workflow so that anybody on the team could use the platform. And with the custom build, it wasn't possible for us. So our solution that we were looking for was just something that really democratized that process so that anybody on the team had a really quick onboarding process to use the platform. That was the most important thing for us. So usability and how quickly we could make changes to the platform when we needed to. Was it responsive and to our needs? So that was the really big difference between using a custom platform and a vendor.
So I think good advice there for those listening. What that requires, right, is that you need to have a good list of who will use it, right, and what role will they play, what kind of permissioning will they need. Before you talk to anybody, any vendor, right, you need to have those answers, right. We want to make sure that this person will be able to access it. This person will be able to do this, but not this. This person will be able to do this, but not this, right. And so the role definition and so forth of who will actually need to interact with the platform is something you need to bring to the table. So I think that's very good advice, Rosalyn. Anybody else?
We look into our tech stack.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Please.
Go ahead, David.
Last point is very important. You need to be somewhat decisive about who's going to interact with that chat box.
David, did you build your own? I know you are a software company, basically. Did you build your own, or did you make a vendor decision when you did some of your experimentations?
We built our own.
Okay. Renzo, how about yourself?
We also using our own using open source. Again, we also need to know what's our tech stack and how the integration will go if we use a vendor. What flexibility do they have, and how do we work integrating to our CRM or our systems to provide that solution.
Right. Interesting. Okay. So we talked in my discussion. We talked about failure. We talked about reasons why chatbots fail. There were 4 of them, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but have you experienced any failures, either small or little, or have you? Do you think that you have avoided failure in some way? Just I want to talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls of chatbots and either how you overcame them or how maybe you fell into one briefly. Does anybody have any experience there?
I'll just reiterate for us, I think what's interesting about what I would call our failure with it was just the fact that the platform itself was functional, and the failure was about the teamwork and the collaboration and not thinking about the level of ease that needed to be there for all of the team members that needed to be involved to be able to use it. So that was what I consider the failure component, because you can get these systems up and running, but ease of use and the ability for your team to actually leverage it to get the value from it is so important, and I think it could be overlooked. I know we did. And I mean, the developers got so tired of just trying to change, sentence structure just on one thing, or just so it bogged them down a lot, and it wasn't deep edits, and so I would say was a real learning moment for us. So just be mindful of the humans who have to be involved with your bot before committing to one, I say.
Okay, interesting. David, Renzo, any pitfalls?
For us, was mostly when using AI, right? AI has to learn, and you have to feed the data and work in a journey and anticipate that journey from a customer point of view, using specific keywords to drive personalization and what will be the outcome of the journey, right? So we fell many times into how anticipation works, how that data will be feeding into from our data warehouse into that specific chat box that will be learning to provide a specific answer to a query. So it's a trial. I think until you perfect it, until the machine is ready to actually walk that journey, anticipate the user's needs.
That's a really interesting answer, because one of the things that we encourage customers to do is to deploy probably even earlier than they might be comfortable, because if you're going to fail, you want to fail early, right, so that you can fix it. So, as long as you have good visibility into places where the chatbot's falling down, we don't have a good answer to this question, or we do have an answer, but the chatbot didn't know that it was the right answer. So if you can do that as early in the process as possible, then, even the next day, the day after, you can fix those gaps, fix those improvements. So to say failure, especially when it comes to learning, right, as long as the bot is learning from each of those failures, and maybe it requires human assistance to do that, but if it is learning, then it can't really be called a failure, at least not of a permanent variety, right? It's stumbling, it's failing, but it's learning, it's getting better. And so I think that's a very important point you made, Renzo, that whenever you're going to do these things, if you are implementing any kind of AI or natural language processing, failure is part of it. It is going to fail. You're going to have to teach it. It has to learn. It has to get better. And so I don't think anyone should be afraid of that. That's just the nature of this beast, and that's just I think the way that it needs to go. So one of the last things we talked about in the kind of opening remarks was, one of the reasons things fail is because of lack of personalization. So I'm going to ask the panel, in what ways, can you, or do you have you, or do you plan to personalize the chatbots that you're experimenting with, or that you envision for your organizations? And what role is personalization going to play? Or has it played so far? Anything you can talk about personalization? I'd like each of the panelists to answer. Why don't we, Rosalyn, you've kind of kicked us off here a few times. Why don't you continue the pattern?
Sure. So for personalization, we haven't gone very deep because our focus is on registration, so it's a little bit before we know a lot of information about the site visitor. So what we do on our current state, we do first name, so we just ask them the first name, and then we kind of ask them some questions to personalize the actual experience that they will have within the platform once they are registered. So within the actual bot, we don't do any deep personalization, but our future state is to connect with systems that will give more purview into customer service tickets based on that first experience with the bot on the front end, and then kind of carry that experience through their product experience.
Right. So this is a common use case, actually. What you're using the bot to do is to gather information that you can use later to personalize other experiences, right?
Mm-hmm. Precisely.
Yep. Very good. David, how about at the EA Sports? What role is personalization either playing now, or what role do you think it's going to play in your AI chatbot strategy?
So the chatbot strategy is similar to Rosalyn, actually, in a sense that we're using it to gather information before potentially sending a player to a human channel. One of the things we are experimenting with right now is actually an in-game chat box experience where the player would be able to get the help they need without having to leave the game itself through voice recognition. And so in doing so, with that technology software, should the player still require a live channel, when they reach a human, that human will already know who they are, will where in the game exactly they need help, what their name is, username, etc., etc. So we're looking at this extensively because we're wanting to ensure that the CX experience stays in the game versus out of the game. So holistically, that's the direction we're heading in across EA Sports. If you need more specifics, let me know. Yeah, if you need more specifics, let me know.
No, it's fine. Renzo, how about yourself? What role is personalization either playing today, or do you envision it playing?
What ambition is ambition right now, because we're working this in the back end with customers we already know. So there are certain trends and patterns that we know from our customers from trading. You know what type of trading they do, what specific placements, trading placements they are doing on a monthly basis. So right now, for a trader, information is king. To provide personalization in terms of first be proactive and engage with the name and answer questions through a process, anticipate their needs if they're going to place a trade or not, or even information based on the trades. It's like today UK elections, right? How is that going to play into the financial markets tomorrow, right? What will be the outcomes? Giving information in real time, right, based on their patterns and their trades is important for a customer. So we're trying to our ambition to put that information in front of our clients when they start interacting with the chat box. Hey, by the way, you place this trade, or you do this X, Y, Z. Here's 3 more options. Which one you would like to us to inform you of, or what actions we anticipate you will make. So it's still in progress. I mean, it's a very ambitious goal.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting, though. If you can even accomplish just part of it, it would be very, very cool.
Yeah,
so,
it's a whole process, yeah.
We have basically reached the end of the discussion. I have one final question I'm going to ask each of the panelists to respond to, and that is this. So I know that there are plenty of people in attendance today at today's event who have no experience with chatbots at all, other than maybe being a consumer and interacting with one. But inside their organization, they have not launched any chatbot initiative yet. They know they need to. They're being asked about it, but they haven't done anything yet. So I would like just 1 or 2 pieces of advice from each of the panelists. What would you say to someone completely inexperienced with chatbots? They know they need to do it. They know it's in store for 2020. What's the 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you would give them? Things to focus on, things to measure, anything. And I would remind everyone listening today, please put in additional questions for either the panelists or myself, because when we're going to enter the Q&A portion of our program here as soon as all the panelists answer that question. So, what advice to the completely uninitiated when it comes to chatbots? David, can you kick us off?
Yeah, I think like any initiative, you want to know what goal you're trying to achieve. So make sure those are solidified prior to just diving in with a chat box. Really try to understand. I think from our perspective, depending on how sensitive your customer community is, really understand and put some proper thought into whether they're going to appreciate speaking with a chat box, or they're actually going to prefer and get more value from speaking to a human. So that would be my advice.
Great, thank you. Renzo, Rosalyn, who wants to go next?
I'll go.
I can go next.
Go ahead, Renzo.
Go ahead, Rosie. Sorry, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I was just going to reiterate the just being laser focused on one thing. I know, especially in our organization with the huge portfolio, I'm reminded of how, when social media kind of started getting legs and everybody wanted to have a Facebook page, but nobody had goals as to like why. They just wanted it because they saw everybody else with it. So I would say just be wary of kind of jumping into it because everybody wants to, or because it's the shiny new toy, and really focus. And you can always scale up. So like really focus on one problem that you have versus, because I mean at any given moment we have several issues that could definitely benefit from the use of a chatbot. But I would say choose one, and then once you get that one thing done, then move on to the others, because there's always going to be something that could benefit from it. Just really focus on what you're trying to do, and always know that you can grow as needed. You can scale.
Good advice. Renzo.
I agree with Rosalyn. You have to start really focus, and you have to also see two sides of the coin. One is what operations efficiency are you going to provide for the company, and then what is the customer perspective on that? What added value you provide to the customer, and when those merge, you're going to have a product. So I will say start small, and focus on the journey, in the customer journey that you're trying to achieve, and the outcome of that, it will be have to be successful.
Great. So let's review the 4 reasons I gave for why we've seen chatbots fail in our experience. The first one was basically no goal, right? So you just heard it. All 3 of them said you need to be focused on a goal. And I also said the inverse can be potentially true, too many goals, right? So you heard laser focused on a goal. There was not using real customer language. Renzo just said you need to think about this from your customer's experience as well, right? So you've got to look at it inside out and outside in. Number 3 on my list was set it and forget it. And I think you've heard all of them say this is a process. You can always scale up, right? Start small, then grow. And so that's not a set it and forget it attitude. That is a very deeply committed, ongoing maintenance attitude. And then the 4th one was around not personalizing the experience. And so I think you've heard them say here a lot of concern about the user, a lot of thinking through that, what the experience will be like for them, any way to augment it to make it better. So the advice is very clearly to have focus, but also the right goals and the right measurements. Okay, well, we are just a little ahead of schedule, which I hope is okay with everyone, but I'm now going to turn it back over to my the Argyle hosts, who will have a series of questions either for me or for the panelists, for all of us, and we'll go until we either answer all the questions or run out of time, and I'll turn it back over to them.
Thank you, Ross, and thank you to our panelists for doing a great job. That was a wonderful discussion. So we are now going to review some of the questions that were submitted by the audience during the discussion. So the first question is actually for you, Ross. You just mentioned that too many defined business goals can cause failure. So how many is too many, and how do you gauge this?
I have a very strong opinion here, which I'll just tell you. I think more than one is too many for an initial launch of a chatbot. I have seen successful companies do 2. I've seen 3. My personal opinion is, and just based on what I've seen, the ones that have been the most successful and the most successful the fastest chose one thing, like Rosalyn said. Now, what one thing is a huge discussion inside your organization. What's the one thing we're going to pick? Is it the easiest thing? Is it the thing that will pay off the best? I don't know, and that's a different question that every organization needs to struggle with themselves. But in my opinion, if you are unexperienced with chatbots and you're going to deploy them, pick one. Pick one thing and do it well, and then that success will beget success with number 2 and number 3, and on it goes.
Great, thank you. So moving on to the next question. What tips can you share on how to successfully maintain your chatbot so it continues to improve its performance?
I think that the folks who have experience with chatbots on our panel should probably take a crack at that one. I mean, I can give you my opinion on what I've seen in the market, but I think those folks actually using the chatbots might have more insight here.
Yeah, I can chime in, David, from EA. So from our perspective, because of the number of different issues our players can have across our product portfolio, we were monitoring it constantly, trying to understand the language players were using when interacting with the chat box, trying to understand the problems that they were using the chat box for. And what we learned from that is topics that they were automatically comfortable using the chat box for, and topics that they weren't comfortable using the chat box for. So that would be my insight to that question.
Rosalyn,
I guess I'll jump in. Yeah, I was going to just say, same for us, kind of just focusing on what we're looking at to impact. So for us, it's those customer service tickets and customer service agents not being taxed with registration questions. So we definitely are pretty vigilant about monitoring the customer service, because it can get really crazy depending on our initiatives, if we just send a program out or, So we always focus on the level of, or what types of customer service tickets we're getting, so that we can say, okay, are the registration ones going down like we planned, and the like. So I think just base it off of what metric you're looking to impact, and is that staying across the board, consistently across the board.
Great, thanks guys. So moving on to the next question. How does your organization ensure that they are providing a personalized experience to every customer at every point of interaction?
Yeah, exactly.
This is
I think
Ross.
that's a really
that's
great
a pretty
question.
tall order.
Yeah, but that's a great question. I don't know if anybody's done that yet, right? I think that's the goal for it.
Yeah, I'm not. I think we could talk philosophically about how organizations might try and achieve that, right? So, for example, Rosalyn said earlier, the chatbot can be used to collect information that helps you personalize experiences down the line. And so I think this is the proper way to think about it, is that every interaction is an opportunity to learn more, but also to personalize that interaction with whatever you can, right, with whatever information that you have. And I think that's probably the way that most companies would attack this, is that they would map out all these journeys, right, and figure out, what can I learn from this interaction so that my next interaction is better? And what do I already know that allows me to augment this interaction that I'm having, right? Whether that's integration with other systems or whatever. And I think you only can do that by really thinking about each one of those journeys almost separately, right? I mean, philosophically, that's how you answer this question. How do you do it? Well, you take every one of these journeys you're going to put your customers through, and you think about it from both right side up and upside down. How can I personalize this one that I'm having with what information I can augment, and how do I learn from this one so that future ones are better and more personalized? I don't know if any of the panelists have other things they've talked about internally or not.
I think I think it's a great question, and I think it depends on the nature of the service and/or product as well. On the more digital side of our world today, I think if there's a constant connection between service, product, when I say service, product, I mean digital, and systems, processes, infrastructure of the particular brand, then you can always deliver a personalized experience. However, that's easier said than done because of the implementation required from a software perspective. I think to do that today would always require the customer to say, this is who I am, whatever that identification is, and then you can obviously deliver personalization through all channels. But it's going to take the customer to say, this is who I am first before that personalization is achieved across all channels. Hopefully that makes sense. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. So another question we have. In your opinion, what are some additional CX trends aside from personalization that are useful in providing a higher quality of service?
That's a great question.
Could you repeat
I can take. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I
Sure.
didn't hear the question. It broke up there at the very beginning.
In your opinion, what are some additional CX trends aside from personalization that are useful in providing a higher quality of service?
So I've actually been doing a lot of research on this lately, just for various reasons. So I'm kind of all about the CX trends, so I'm definitely comfortable. Speaking on this, so I did some research, and what we found, just for, again, the different partners we work with, was that customers expect customer service within 5 minutes of contacting a brand online. We also found out that they first go to online chat, or they want some type of online chat, like 6 out of 10. So I guess the overall impact that I was thinking as I was looking at all of the different trends was that look at how Amazon and how all of our connected homes and all of our connected devices have kind of made us have this really quick, instant gratification. And every customer expects that in every area. So it doesn't matter if you're B2B or B2C, that same expectation that you have of Amazon delivering your package in one day, or Netflix knowing what movie to serve up for you because of something you've watched in the past, that is not something that is a nice to have anymore. It's actually kind of the business imperative. So I would say just looking at the larger players and like Amazon and like Google and what they're doing and the expectations that they're creating for us, I think that would be, I would say, look at that for the trends that you can see to impact your customer experience.
I would say,
go ahead, Renzo.
So I was going to say, one of the things is anticipation, right? Be proactive in trying to know your customers and what they need and what they're looking for. If you can anticipate their needs, and their experience will be, so the customer satisfaction will improve significantly. And that's what we're trying to do when we will do the chatbots or the CX, try to anticipate their needs and what they're looking for before they already asked us. And that's what I think Google Amazon, the big tech giants are doing right now, anticipate your needs and, with the keywords, with queries, what are the journeys, and knowing your customers is the most, the key thing for us.
One of the things we've observed from our customer base is that one of the interesting things that chatbots have done is actually increased expectations when it comes to human-to-human interaction. And what I mean by that is, so if I interact with a chatbot, and let's say I get 1 or 2 questions answered, great, but my third question, it can't answer. So now I am being escalated to a live agent, either a phone-based agent or a chat agent or text messaging or whatever the channel happens to be. And the consumer, because they've successfully interacted with the chatbot, but the chatbot has failed to answer them the third time, their expectation of resolution for that human agent is now very high, right? And there's a lot of pressure. Also, their expectation that the human agent knows what the issue is high. Right, so the chatbot has raised the bar for the agent, and what that has meant is that internal processes and procedures for a lot of contact centers are changing. If I'm finally able to talk to someone or chat with someone and they don't have the authority, access, whatever is necessary for them to actually solve my problem, that is a very bad customer experience. And so, and unfortunately, it's very true in a lot of contact centers across the world. And so what is happening is agents need more access, agents need more empowerment, agents need more tools that allow them to be as efficient as possible. And so there's some dynamics at the contact center that are changing because of the advent of some of these technologies being successful. So that's one of the CX trends that I'm seeing is actually changes to the agent world in order to facilitate and meet the rising expectations of the consumer population.
And a trend we've noticed in the gaming community is just a shift towards one-to-many channels, and by that I mean the social, digital channels and self-serve tools to seek help for their problems versus wanting to connect with live agent. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. So it looks like we probably have time for one more. So I think this one will be a great one to wrap up our discussion. So as we've seen the recent emergence of chatbots, what are some customer experience practices or strategies that you can see becoming obsolete in a few years?
I'll take a stab at that one. In terms of obsolete, I think obviously it depends on your target audience demographic, but I'm going to actually make what I would perceive as a big risky statement. I don't actually see any becoming obsolete in the next few years because I only see service delivery products becoming more and more complex, and I think issues aren't going to go away. It might be easier to solve issues, but I think the types of issues that exist will evolve and grow. So I don't actually see any CX practices becoming obsolete, other than mail in a postcard, that type of stuff. But feel free to disagree across the panel. Thanks.
David, this is Ross speaking. I actually was going to say the exact same thing with one difference, which is I don't think anything goes away. I think who does it is changing. In other words, we're already at the point where resetting a password is almost entirely automated, or should be for the most part, right? So what that means is that anything that can be automated is going to be, which I think means that the problems that we will have to solve in human-to-human interactions are going to become much more difficult. I think much more complicated, much more multifaceted, across systems, integration-based. I think that as chatbots get better and better and better, we will continue to automate more things in a self-service capacity, which means the ones that fall out of that process are going to be hard. They're going to be very difficult problems and require potentially different skills than we have today.
I would 100% agree with you.
I agree with both of you guys. Same exact feedback. I don't think anything goes away at all. It's always still there.
Great. So thank you guys for the great discussion. So that is all the questions that we have today. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this fantastic webinar. And I hope you enjoyed the insightful content. And thanks again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.